Hello, welcome to another video. In this video we're talking about the actual makeup of the frame house, how it goes together, what elements there are, and in what order they go. And we're starting off of course with the foundation, which is the Svai, the piles, or Svai in Russian. As you can see here, this is the model of what they will look like, and if you remember the plan, I'll bring that up now. You can see that they are the same plan. So once you got the piles in, you would also have, I'll zoom in a little bit, I haven't modelled it, but on here you would have a cap on the top, and that's called a plastina or головка, whichever you prefer in Russian. And it's a metal plate that sits on the top and it's bolted onto the top of the pile. That's where your next stage comes in. So this would be the next stage, and it's called the Обвязка, or support structure, under the building. What it normally consists of is, in my case, I'm using what they call doski pакет, which means that it's a pile of boards that are nailed together. And if I zoom in here, you see they're put in a very specific way. We'll go through that when I actually build it, but they're put in a very specific way, and that is what they call the Обвязка. That's it modelled there. Also, one thing I forgot to mention was that on top of each pile, as well as the головка or the plastina, or cap if you like, there would also be a piece of roofing felt on the top to stop moisture going up into the timber. That in Russian is called ruberoid, and it's roofing felt basically, a thin piece of roofing felt, square cut, and it prevents moisture coming up into the building. So that's the Обвязка, the support. Again, this is all worked out on the plan, and it's all very carefully done. As you can see, if I put it onto this direction, you can see how it works out, that this Обвязка follows the piles in the order that they're put in, and so it's very important this is done correctly. Very important that the piles are in the correct place. So next on the, after the Обвязка is finished, then on comes the flooring. The flooring is called Лаги, and they go onto the top of the Обвязка, and this is where your insulation goes between this and your walls. This is your floor structure, if you like, and as you can see, it stays on top of the Обвязка. So next on comes the walls. I haven't modelled every individual piece, but I've modelled this piece in particular because for me it's a vital piece, and I wanted to get it absolutely right. So this is the front window, obviously, and as you can see, it's in a certain way, but these are the walls. These would go on next. A few things to look at, very important points. Between this bit here, the bottom of this frame, and the Обвязка, this bit here, if I can get a closer look, this bit here should go some insulation. It's a tight. These are, I've forgotten what they're called, but they're rolls of insulation that go between this, and you basically staple them onto the timber, and this goes on top, and it stops drafts coming through here. And also something else, when you've got a lot of timber like this joined together, you must have insulation between each piece, otherwise you can get a draft coming through there. And same here, each piece has to have a piece of insulation in. A lot of people forget that and they don't put it in, and then what you see is houses with a lot of expanding foam in the joints, trying to stop the drafts coming in. So next comes in the walls. All the walls come in next, and you can see I've got them modelled in here, but I haven't done the actual framework inside the walls because I don't need it to do that. So on to the next bit, but that's where they would go. They would come on top of the Обвязка. So the next point, once the walls are up, then there's something called Verkhnya Obvязка, which is the top plate, or I think you call it sill in some places. So that's this piece of timbers that run along the top of the walls and provide a support for the roof. And in my case, I'm using two 150 by 50 millimeters, and that's, so if you look at the down, you see it's in red here. As you can see, support goes along the top of all the walls except for the window, and the internal walls as well, an internal wall there, and that's the support for the roof and the ceiling. Again, an important point to note: if you're between the top of the wall and this top plate, there must be insulation in there, in that piece there. Something to be wary of. On to the next part. So the next part we move on to is the ceiling. As you can see here, I've got it modelled in, and this rests, well, it's difficult to see, but it rests on top of the Верхняя Обвязка, between. So this rests on top of the Верхняя Обвязка, the ceiling, and again in between the Верхняя Обвязка and this timber here, there must be insulation. These are rolls of insulation. I'll get the number in a minute. So that's the ceiling. That's the way that goes in. Again, all carefully planned out according to the architect's design. Next piece on would be, the next part up is this roof support, or roof frame. I don't know what this is called in English, and I don't know what it's called in Russian. Probably it's called uppor, roof uppor, which means roof support. And this is carefully designed by the architect again, and very, very carefully done, almost fitting very well. There's no need to insulate these. If you, sorry, there's one thing I did mention, whether it's a cold roof or a warm roof, and the difference is that in a cold roof the ceiling is insulated and the roof is not. So if you weren't planning to use a second story, which I'm not, then there's no point in insulating it. I insulate the ceiling, which is what I'm going to do, and then the roof is left with just water membrane and the final finish. Next in comes the roof rafters. Once the roof rafters on like this, again very carefully calculated, and then after the roof rafter comes on, then we have something called dymovka, which I haven't modelled, but basically pieces of timber that go across here. They're 15 by 20 millimeters by 100 millimeters planks, and they go across here, and they support the final roof phase, which would be metal, or there's 1,000 different roof finishes you can get. So once the roof's on and it's all closed up, then you would finish the outside walls, which would be in my case imitation Bruce, imitatsi Bruce is coming on. Once that's on, then we can look at the inside a little bit. Now the inside here is an important part. So the next part, once the roof's on, we're looking at the inside, and this is where after the floor's been put in, it's insulated, then you put a layer of water membrane. I'm skipping through this quite quickly, but on top of that goes these planks of wood, and this is called dymovka, and these would support the final layer of your floor, that being plywood or whatever you're using. The way it goes: piles, then the support, then the floor, the walls, the top plate or sill, then the support for the roof, then the roof. Once the roof's on, then you can look at the inside. This bit here, this support, then the final layer on, and that's the basic layout of a frame house.